approaching sunset. Traffic southbound number 3 lane. Exiting at sunset. Traffic exiting at sunset. We'll notify LAPD.
911, what's your emergency? This is how can I help you?
911 emergency, what do you report?
Hello and welcome back to We Speak Dispatch. I'm John here in the East Coast with the usual cast of suspects. Here we have Leslie.
West Coast represent.
Oh, West
All right.
Coast.
Lord. Joe.
I guess Midwest representative. Midwest.
And Doug.
I guess I'm representing the South. Welcome
There
aboard.
you go. Our special guest on this episode is Jimmy out of New York City, and our discussion is going to offer some different perspectives. But today we usually we talk about law enforcement side of the house, but today we're going to switch gears and talk mainly about fire and EMS dispatch, mainly fire dispatch. So how many of us dispatch for fire EMS besides myself?
I did.
Just Joe, and Jimmy did. So
It's the
Jimmy,
three of you right there. So Leslie and I will have a conversation. Hi, Leslie. How are you doing?
Yeah,
Hey.
exactly. Just keep your badges.
Yeah,
and
we'll just
guns
go over to the
there.
corner over
You
here.
know
and,
what? Sometimes
Yeah.
y'all need the badges and your guns. I'm just saying. So
That's right. Got to make
Hey,
the scene safe.
we have
Anyway.
Hearst tools and other stuff. We're good.
Oh, please. It's actually gotten to a point where I'll tell units, hey, guys, it's the middle of PD tour change. Just pull them over to the side of the road. Let them exchange information. Have a nice day, because God knows when the cops are going to show up.
wow. Okay.
Especially nowadays. So
Yeah.
Jimmy, our special guest, is or was a dispatcher in New York. And why don't you tell us about yourself?
Wow.
Okay, well, I'm 48 years old. I'm originally from Queens, New York. If you're familiar with the movie Goodfellas, I grew up in the neighborhood where most of that happened.
Wow.
Awesome. My earliest memories in the New York City Fire Department were seeing Rescue Company number 4 go up and down Queens Boulevard. I spent a lot of time hanging out in the firehouse in South Queens, Engine Company 308 and the 5-1 Battalion. It ain't easy being single in Bollywood, USA. I was a buff. I was into the job. My day would stop at 5 o'clock on a Saturday. I'd be watching Johnny and Roy in Emergency
Oh my God.
on local TV station. It was Emergency, Star Trek, then Solid Gold. Now I'm really dating myself.
Okay. Wow.
Solid
All right.
gold.
So,
Wow.
but-
His career
Public-
path could have gone a completely
Wow. It
different
could
way.
have
Yeah,
went
right?
a real different
Hey,
way.
welcome Marilyn Mccoo.
Yeah, exactly. I was always partial to who was the other one that was the host
Rick
on that?
Dees hosted it. for a
No,
while.
it was another lady.
Don
Oh,
from
Dionne
Sultry?
Warwick. Yes,
Dionne Warwick, that's right.
Oh, Dionne
Dionne
Warwick
Warwick,
was awesome.
No. Wow. I never heard of that
public-
show. I was too young at that one.
Public service and public safety is the family business.
Wow.
My father was a police officer. His father was a corrections officer who couldn't become a firefighter after World War II for whatever reasons. My father-in-law is a retired firefighter. My brother-in-law is a retired firefighter. My brother was a paramedic lieutenant with FDNY EMS. I just buried him 4 months ago from September 11th related cancer. I mean, the list goes on and on with it's the family business. We moved to the suburbs of New York City when I was about 12 years old, a place called Lake Carmel in Putnam County, about maybe an hour north of New York City. And I got really involved in the fire service then, being a fire explorer. I was an explorer from 87 to 91. I joined the Volleys in 91. I'm also a veteran of the United States Coast Guard. I served from 92 to 96. Just before I got out, my father calls me and says, hey, listen, they're giving a dispatches test. You want to take it? I'm like, I don't know. There's a reservist sitting next to me who happens to be a lieutenant with the FDNY. And he says, you want to be a fireman? I said, yeah. He goes, take the test, get your foot in the door. Best advice
I was going to
ever took.
say,
Wow.
that's a step back being in the field, going behind the desk now, or
Well,
it's a
yeah.
perceived step back.
Well,
Yeah.
it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
Some people love it.
Yeah.
And I got on the job in 97. Like I said, I learned from guys who did it without a computer in some of the busiest times New York City's ever had. We call it the war years, ran from the mid 60s to probably the late 70s, early 80s, where New York City was burning all over the city. When you hear stories about the South Bronx or areas in Brooklyn that look like a war zone of just rubble and empty streets, they weren't kidding. I can remember driving around there when I was a kid going to my grandmother's house up in the Bronx and, going over the bridge and counting the plumes of smoke, from a second alarm over here and all hands, which is a full one alarm, and a third alarm over here. And I would hear stories from the guys I used to work with, that worked during those days that were, into taking pictures and stuff. They get off of 4 to 12 and they'd be like, all right, which one do you think we're going to go to? That second alarm over on Southern Boulevard, maybe that all hands down on Concord Avenue. And like I was saying earlier, it wasn't uncommon to call out over the radio looking for anybody available and getting dead silence because nobody was available. They were either at fires or they were cleaning up and they weren't ready to go yet. I caught part of that, not like I would hear stuff on the radio when I was a kid, hearing the tail end of those years. But like I said, I came on the job and I was incredibly fortunate to learn from people that we considered like legends in dispatch. I worked a little bit in Brooklyn, which is the largest borough in New York City, most amount of companies, and it's the borough of fire. There's no two ways about it. I did a little while in the Bronx, and then I went to Manhattan, and I think I earned my bones, for lack of a better term, as a Manhattan dispatcher. Because what I tell people is, if you want nothing but fire, go to Brooklyn. You want a decent amount of fire and some like weird stuff that could possibly happen because you have both the airports and a few other things. Go to Queens. If you want, I don't know what I'm going to get when I pick up the phone, or it's going to be on the 5 o'clock news, go to Manhattan. You name it, it'll happen in Manhattan.
So were you
a little bit earlier, Jimmy? When we were in here just a little bit earlier, you mentioned something about dispatch and fire that I found kind of interesting. You said each street or corner has a number, and you guys have a running order for those streets with the numbers. Can you explain the numbers and what you were saying to us earlier for the dispatchers listening for a big city dispatch?
Okay. New York City is known for their what they call box numbers. Now, every other street corner in New York City has a box number attached to it. Either there's an actual physical alarm box on the corner that you can activate to speak to either the police department or the fire department, or
they still have those blue boxes on the corner.
Oh yeah,
in Manhattan too.
Really?
Yeah,
I was just there. I didn't even see them.
You weren't looking close enough.
Wow. God almighty.
I was in Manhattan on Monday with some cousins from out of town. I was pointing stuff out. I'm like, yeah, there's an alarm box. That's don't touch it, but that's how it works.
And those are still active. You just pick up a receiver. Oh,
well, no. What you would do is you would press a button, and it would ring through, and it would come to us, and it would pop up on the screen where the box was, the box number, the intersection, and then if it will just say I'm working in Queens and I get a box from Brooklyn, it'll say box. We'll just say 1082 Washington Avenue, Empire Boulevard, with a big B in parentheses next to it.
But that just gets you to the block where this event is occurring. It doesn't take you to the address of where this fire actually is, right?
Correct. Unless you get voice contact and they give you an address over the box.
Holy
now in Manhattan, I mean, voice contact, you'd hear everyone but the person calling in, I suspect.
Not necessarily. Well, we had a workaround for that. If you couldn't hear what the person was saying, you put in audio problem at the alarm box, off goes an engine company.
Oh wow.
And that's
to investigate.
Right. And that's when you kind of hope, okay, let's see if we get a subsequent telephone call to fill this out. Or for the hearing impaired or speech impaired, they had a system of taps, almost like Morse code. And, it was like 2 taps for fire, 1 tap, 1 tap, 1 tap for PD. I got a story about that. Some guy was convinced that he had a hearing and speech impaired person at the box. So we sent it out. And it goes out as what we called at the time a deaf mute. So the first new truck company pulls up and says, latitude 8 to Manhattan, you got anything further? The deaf mute also appears to be the invisible man. So, and then other times we still have the mechanical boxes that you pull.
Oh my
God. It would trip an electric circuit with the box number. So, let's say 3593 at Bainbridge Avenue and Jerome Avenue, the end of the number 4 train in the Bronx. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3. And it would hold on the 3 and then go 3 more rounds. So you at least had time to write it down in the event that, you didn't hear it the first time.
Hey, I'm assuming they have a lot of cameras in the Manhattan area. So when you're
Never
dispatching a
assume
fire, can you
anything,
see
but
them?
yes.
Like, hey, we got it
Um,
on camera here, and we can see it. What's going on? And
Well, basically, what a lot of guys would do is they'd sit there and watch certain street cams. If we had a car accident on one of the highways, we could look at the DOT cams and go, okay, here's where it is. And then, yell over to the guy at the radio, hey, listen, it's on the Cross Bronx, which is I-95 for those of you who don't know. It's just past Rosedale Avenue going New Jersey bound. And we could just go over to the radio, hey, listen, you're coming this way, you're going to run right into it because it's on Cross Bronx.
so you can
past
see the
Rosedale.
stuff that's going on. You must have a lot of
Sometimes,
cameras, right?
sometimes you can. Sometimes you can. Other times,
Cool.
we'll get a working fire and we're all grabbing the phones looking at citizens.
Yeah.
And
Now,
Question real quick about the working fires. I just like amazing. It worked at New York City. We run out where I'm from dispatching fire of apparatus at third alarm. What does New York have the potential to go up to?
all right.
Oh God.
Well, each assignment card for each box in the city, with the new computer system that we put in last year, has the capability to record up to 20 alarms worth of apparatus. So you're talking 80 engine companies and probably 60 something truck companies.
Wow.
Now, a reported fire in New York City, 3 engines, 2 ladders, and a battalion chief right off the bat. Okay. We have a little thing we call loading it up. Now, if we're getting numerous calls and we're getting quality calls, people saying, fires out the windows, that they're bailing out the fire escapes. I hear windows breaking. I hear that at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm loading the box up. I'm sending more help. So we give them a 4th engine company. We give them the heavy rescue company. And then we give them a squad company, which is like a manpower unit. They can operate as an engine. They can operate as a ladder company. And they can also do rescue and hazmat work. They do a little bit of everything. And all the squads in New York City, we have 8 of them, actually have a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd due area as engine company. So like Squad 61 was 1st due to my old office. So we get a report of a fire at box 4306, I think it is, Marconi Street and Waters Place. Squad 61 is going in as an engine. They pull up and it's, blowing out the windows of the subway next to the liquor store, and they transmit the signal for the working fire. They get another squad company coming in to act as a squad company. So, and
Joe wants to have all those fire trucks where he works.
We could have used them the other day. We had a big apartment complex.
That's probably the whole state of where the fire trucks in Iowa.
Well, it's 100. Let me see if I get this right. It's 197 engine companies.
Oh my God.
143 truck companies, 49 fire battalions, 6 or 7 specialized battalions, 8 squad companies, 5 heavy rescues, 5 unmanned USAR units, which are cross-staffed by either the rescue company or a truck company that they're quartered with.
Yeah.
6 fireboats.
Hey, let me ask you this though. Because we got this when I worked in LA, we would have people bitching about the freeways blocked with an accident. Manhattan is like a total box everywhere. When you get fire trucks on scene, do you get calls of people saying they need to get the hell out of the way?
Only on the highways.
Only on the
and usually the calls would come from NYPD.
Oh my God.
It's like, hey, listen, can you guys open up a lane so we can get in there? No problem. We'll see what we can do. But if it's a local, sorry, you're gonna have to wait.
Yeah, at that point.
Wow.
Another dispatch question for you. I just love these dispatch questions. I'm going rapid fire right at you.
Go ahead.
Another dispatch question for you because I like it. How many dispatchers are working New York City Fire? Where's the last one you worked at?
Okay, New York City Fire Department has 5 supervising dispatchers, 1 for each borough. Okay.
Okay.
And anywhere, let's see, 5 in Staten Island, that's 17, 30 dispatchers.
Wow.
Citywide at any given time.
Wow.
So it's a
and some of those are call taking and some are on the radio, correct?
You have the boss, the supervising dispatcher. You have in Manhattan and Brooklyn 3 call takers. Okay. The other 3 boroughs have 2 call takers.
That's it.
Well, we have overflow. So what happens is, let's say like the last day I was working, we had this massive apartment building fire. When the calls would get connected to the fire department, if the Bronx didn't answer after X amount of time, it would immediately roll over to the next available borough, which would be, we'll say, Queens. Okay, if Queens didn't pick up, Manhattan picked up. If Manhattan didn't pick up, Brooklyn picked up.
Okay, so there's a fail safe built in.
Oh yeah, there is. There is.
Leslie, what do you got?
So I know, because we were talking to Jimmy before we started recording, and I know that one of his claims to fame, I guess, or something that I know that once people hear about it, they're going to want, I mean, talk about a lot of questions is, so how many people were working on September 11th? Because you can't, especially in public safety, you can't say NYPD, NYFD without, or FDNY without thinking,
right.
you know, September 11th.
Okay.
And you had mentioned that you were working there. What was that?
The number of dispatchers for fire only is was the same number as I just gave you. Probably one less. Back then, Staten Island only had one call taker. And you know, there were calls that just never got answered, or it took forever for them to come through. I was sitting at my desk and I was drinking ice water out of a spaghetti sauce jar, waiting for my, you know, bagels and the papers. And yeah, well, that's how we roll. You know, had my feet up, and the next thing you know, have you guys ever seen the video of the first plane hitting?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that the guys were out for that gas leak at Church and Lispinard. Yeah. I took that phone call.
Oh geez.
And then the first plane goes in. Engine 6 was over by the police headquarters, maybe like 6 or 7 blocks east of the Trade Center. They saw the first plane go in, came over the radio, Engine 6 to Manhattan, transmit a second alarm. We just had a plane to the Trade Center. My feet come off the desk and I'm like, this is bullshit. Somebody's messing with us. Then the intercom, the voice alarm from the firehouse across the street, the 10 house, starts going off, and it sounds like a chime, like you picked the right letter on the Wheel of Fortune. It's like ding, ding. Then the alarm box starts coming in from 2 World Trade, 8087. And then every phone line in the office lit up, and for lack of a better term, all hell broke loose. It went rapidly. There was a second alarm off the bat. Battalion 1 left the gas leak, transmitted a third alarm, transmitted a 1060, which is our radio code for a major emergency. And basically even more cavalry shows up. They go to a 5th. And now you've got an army of firefighters coming to do whatever they got to do. I remember Chief Gansey, the chief department, coming over the Brooklyn Bridge about 10, 15 minutes into it. You know, Manhattan, what do you have operating at the Trade Center? We have a 5th alarm. Okay, we'll transmit another 5th alarm. We just had a second plane hit. You know, so right there goes any idea that this could have possibly been an accident.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you know, shit just got real.
Do you guys have a TV in the comm center? Can you see what's going on?
We have a TV, and we're watching everything happening, you know, for lack of a better term, in real time.
Yeah. And
then, you know, talking to people trapped in the buildings, talking to people on scene, trying to coordinate as best we can, you know, given the situation. And
did you also accept text messages?
This was before texting was a big
This was,
thing.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, this was 20 years ago. Text to 911 is something that's only recently come into play in New York City. And just as I was getting to retire, they were starting to really like ramp it up. I don't usually like talking about it with people who don't understand what it is we do. And I'm like, you don't want to know, you don't want to know, you don't want to know. And then they push me. And I'm like, all right, you asked for it. We have a script that we have to follow. Fire department, our dispatcher number, what's the address of the fire? Just before the second tower came down, I picked the phone up. I barely get the words fire department out of my mouth. Lady says, never mind. I'm like, what do you mean, never mind? He just jumped. Okay. Hung up on her, took the next phone call. Next.
Jeez. Well, and I mean, is there even any, at what point do you just realize, fuck this? And you can bleep that out, Doug. That, I mean, to coordinate stuff, it's like, there ain't no way. This is
actually
keep track of everything.
Yeah.
Well, that's where the chips came in handy. We were able to track everybody that was operating on the computer, and then we took the status board where we have the plastic chips to do everything manually, and they were pulling chips left and right, just writing down 8084, which is number one World Trade. 8087 was number two World Trade. Box 300, West Street and Vesey Street. They had a staging area there. Box 20 something or other for Battery Park City, which is on the other side of West Street from the Trade Center. Put units there, and then we had the Westchester County, which is just north of New York City, had their field communications unit at the Bronx office, and they were coordinating with the Bronx dispatchers, mutual aid coming in from up north. And I'm not sure exactly how they did it with the CAD we had at the time. And I'm pretty sure they did shit manually and just
Yeah.
One more
last question.
One more question.
Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead,
I
Joe.
want a question because he's a sports fan, and I want to ask a sports question about September.
Sure.
11th.
What a transition.
Yeah, no, it's still about September 11th.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
George Bush came out and threw out the first pitch of a baseball game.
Yeah, it's Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
Yankee Stadium. Can you say what it was like for you guys if you were working that event and what that did for the city of New York, or what are your thoughts on that? Because if you watch any sports show,
I'm not quite sure that President Bush's throwing of the first pitch made as much of an emotional impact as him standing on the pile with that retired firefighter and saying, we hear you, the whole world hears you.
right?
But along that same line, about a week and a half later, my Mets were playing the Braves, and Mike Piazza hits this monster home run.
Yes, he
to
did.
the left field bleachers. To me, that is probably was the jump start, for lack of a better term, to start getting New York City to recover. And
My goodness.
I mean, I could go on with you guys for hours about that, and things that happened where, like, the tape, the 911 calls, they were all confiscated, and then the families sued to have the tapes released. And my first reaction to that was, okay, well, release them unedited. You want to hear this so bad?
Mm-hmm.
Here you go. But they came up with a compromise that if they couldn't identify the voice of the civilian calling, the civilian's voice was removed from the tape. And this was like almost 5 years later, and I'm like, are you guys kidding me? Why even bother? Put it out unedited. If these people want to hear it so bad, let them hear it, regardless of who it is.
Yeah.
And I remember clear as day calling into work in the Bronx, and the guys on the news radio saying, if this upsets you, you may want to change the channel. And I'm sitting there in my car going, please don't let it be me that's talking to this guy. And sure enough, it was me.
Aye.
And I just walked in. I walked in the office, and I'm like, I can't freaking believe this, because that's when all the questions started getting asked.
Yeah.
And
Well,
like, I would
we're
have.
gonna.
Oh, I'm sorry. What were you about to say, John?
No, finish your thought. Then I have something.
Okay. This is when all the questions people started asking. I was getting phone calls all day. Hey, listen, why did you tell that guy to stay where he was? I'm like, because that's what we were trained to do.
Yeah.
We had a policy called shelter in place. If the calling party's above the fire floor, you tell them to sit tight until somebody gets up there. If they're below the fire floor, get the hell out of the building if you can. Get a stair, make the stairs, and get the hell out. And okay. And then 5 years later, you get all the Monday morning quarterbacks going, well, that stairway was open. Why did that idiot tell him to take the stairways? Because we didn't fucking know.
Yeah. And such an unusual incident, you would never know that. So,
No.
Yeah.
But and this is kind of a sad story. Bruce Brenner, who was the supervisor dispatcher in Manhattan, God rest his soul, after that happened, he requests a transfer out to Queens. He's like, I've had enough of Manhattan. I need a break. They're like, all right, Bruce, we'll send you to Queens. Either his first or second day in Queens, flight 587 goes down in the Rockaways.
Oh my gosh.
And he retired right after that.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, that's it. That's enough.
Well, last thing, Jimmy, you are retired now, correct?
Well, he's drinking. I'm hoping he is.
Well,
Yeah,
he's not
I'm
at work.
retired.
So.
I've been officially
could be on a
retired since
He's on a break right now.
since February 18th.
Okay. Well, congratulations. Thank you for your service in the Coast Guard.
Yes.
This has been a great conversation. A lot of hearing about FDNY, some of the backstories that did or did not get released, particularly from someone who actually worked September 11th and other high-level events, i.e. January 9th in the Bronx. So we'd love to have you back, maybe to continue this conversation, particularly about just other topics, but this is real informative. And as you said, we could go on for hours about this, but now we're at the 25-minute mark. So there's our hour that's up. So thanks for joining us today on We Speak Dispatch. I'm going to give it to Joe to talk about where everyone who's not listening can find us.
So if you want to hear this episode or any future episodes, past episodes, you can find us on almost any podcast platform. We're also on all over social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we just joined TikTok. So make sure you join us, and maybe you'll see a couple funny videos from this episode posted to TikTok as well. Jimmy, it has been an absolute pleasure meeting you. Thank you for your service. Thanks for everything you did on September 11th.
Everybody.
And everybody else that was working at major events. So thank you to everybody in New York.
Yes,
my pleasure.
Thank you.
Have a great show.
Hey, it's Michelle, and you've been listening to another great episode of We Speak Dispatch, proudly sponsored by our friends at Zybex.
Down approaching sunset. Southbound number 3 lane.